So we watched the third episode
Episode
of True Love,
of
which is called Holly,
Holly.
which the main character is played by Billie Piper,
Yeah.
and is called Holly. Um, it's based in a school, most of it, with little clips outside of it,
Yeah.
and it's telling the story of Holly as a teacher. And it starts. Does it start off? I can't remember if it starts off in the classroom or with.
This establishing scene is within a classroom.
Yeah, yeah, because it's then introducing you to the characters, and you can
Yeah.
see. So Lauren, who is the daughter of
Karen.
Nick,
Oh, sorry.
Lauren.
Lauren, yes,
Yes,
sorry.
Karen is there.
Yeah,
Is the girl.
yes.
So Lauren's in it from
Yeah.
the first
And that
one.
is the connecting
Yes.
part
Yeah.
to this episode.
Yeah, there's not really. Although there is another connection, but it's a connection to a later episode,
Yeah.
not the one that's already been had.
Yeah.
So we won't touch on that one, but there
No.
is another link, which
Yeah.
you'll find out if you watch the next video.
Yeah.
So it starts off in a classroom
Yeah.
with Holly at the front, obviously as a teacher,
Yeah.
and then you have Lauren, who is Nick from the first episode's daughter,
Yeah.
and another girl called Karen, who is her best friend.
Yes.
Um, she she's clearly a bit awkward, so
Yeah.
clearly a new teacher.
Yeah.
Um,
Someone who's probably on a first teaching job and it's quite within the episode itself. It kind of is sort of highlighting that is this the kind of job that she would want to actually be in?
yeah, yeah, definitely. So it's clear that she's questioning
Yeah.
her choices
Yeah.
in job as well as other things in her
Yeah.
life, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
But they are GCSE level students,
Yeah.
so they're 16 years old.
Yeah.
Most of them will be 15, 16,
Yeah.
depending on where they sit in the year. But so obviously a very difficult year group to be.
To teach
Yeah.
and keep control of in a classroom situation.
Yeah, and meaning there's not much distance between her, who's probably in her early to mid 20s, and 16-year-olds, not a huge amount of difference. So
Yeah.
you've got that contentious time
Yeah.
when you become a teacher
Yeah.
at the beginning. And then it goes to, I believe, her having Holly having a,
Affair with a
yes,
man who is married and he himself is in a future episode of the series. So
yes, so that's the connection that we have
Yeah.
later on. And it's clear that he's very much in control of that. She's
Yeah.
fallen in love with him.
Yeah.
Which is touched on when she's having a conversation with her
Yeah.
mum. She's kind of having a conversation with her as in, I've
Yeah.
met someone, but I don't know where it's going.
Yeah, and kind of sort of in love at the same time, aware that nothing's going to come from it, and it's just
She does ask him at one point whether he'll stay,
yeah,
and she says no.
Yeah.
He says no.
yeah,
You know, I can't. And she's
Yeah.
hurt by that, but can
Yeah.
kind of understand why. So
yeah,
there's a lot of internalization of feelings, I think, for
Yeah.
her. She's very emotional. You can see
Yeah.
that. And then when it goes back to her being in a teaching capacity again, you can tell again she's quite emotional at
Yeah.
that point. It's affected her the night before
Yeah.
when she's asked him to stay.
Yeah.
It's definitely affected her, which then leads into a conversation
So
she has with Karen.
Yeah,
She asks for her to go. So I
it
think
doesn't actually. It starts off with them just talking to each other, and Karen being very much around, sort of saying that. So I can't think it's where she says, "I don't know why everyone treats you so badly," or it's something to do around.
yeah. So she starts off. It's in the corridor, isn't it? She starts having.
It's in a classroom.
Oh, the first one
She's
is.
drawing something.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and then the next time they have a
Yeah.
conversation is in the corridor,
right.
and she asks her to go. But there's
So,
what seems like tension, I suppose.
yeah, it's at this point it's not clear where the tension is going because there's a tension there, but it's not developed as to where.
There's little looks to each other,
Yeah.
And it's as if Karen's kind of picking up that Holly isn't happy.
Yeah,
I would say, and that Holly's
Yeah.
not really understanding that
Yeah.
there is something there at that point.
yeah,
And then the next time they meet after class, they see each other in the
Yeah.
corridor,
yeah,
and Karen asks her to go to an art exhibition with her because
Yeah.
it's not. I think that Holly is their English teacher, but clearly has an interest in art.
yeah,
So Karen's picked up on that,
Yeah.
and she kind of reluctantly agrees. You
Yeah.
can tell she's like, the boundaries should be here,
yeah,
but maybe I can cross it, and maybe
Yeah.
it's okay because
Yeah.
I think maybe because it's a school related thing, it's educational
yeah. So there's
at
like
that point.
yeah, and so I think that is how she sort of squares it in her head is that is something that is occasionally related, so why not?
Yeah,
So, and also, this is probably one of the few people I seem to be getting on with
in a whole life,
in my
not
whole
just
life.
but
Yes.
certainly in the class,
Yeah.
because there seems to be again a lot of tension with the
Yeah.
students generally.
Yeah.
Um, and then they go to this place. They meet on the beach, I think, and
Yeah.
then they go to the art exhibition
Yeah.
where they you can see their relationship building. So you can see this friendship building between the two
Yeah.
of them, which again doesn't seem massively
Yeah.
inappropriate, other than the fact they shouldn't have crossed that boundary, or
Yeah.
that Holly shouldn't have crossed that boundary in the
Yeah.
first place. But you kind of like, okay,
Yeah.
maybe it's just a friendship, and that's not great from a
Yeah.
teacher-student perspective,
Yeah.
but it's
Mm.
okay.
Yeah.
They sit and chat, and sort of you can again
And
see,
Holly starts to mention more personal things of her
yeah,
life.
and Karen clearly is enjoying those conversations.
Yeah.
The glances from both of them then
Yeah.
start becoming a little bit more,
Pronounced.
yeah, and a bit more intense,
Yeah.
and sort of catching each other's eye a little bit, rather than it
Yeah.
being that it's just feeling different at this point.
Yeah.
Like there's something there, there's a
Yeah.
connection for both sides.
Yeah.
And I think Karen says something along the lines of, I can't really talk to people like this.
Yeah. It's like, uh, and she says about how she can't imagine she's never really been interested in boys, something along those lines,
Yeah,
and that she can't imagine having a close connection with anyone.
yeah, because Holly asks her about boys, doesn't she?
Yeah.
She has that conversation with her, and she that's when she kind of comes
Yeah.
back forward with that, and then she asks Holly, Karen asks Holly
Yeah.
about
About
her
her
relationship
relationship.
status, which
And
at that point she doesn't give much information
yeah.
about. And then they go and sit on the beach, don't they? So
Yeah.
they're sitting and talking, and it's clearly getting closer and closer.
Yeah.
And then the next time you see Holly, I think it's when she's in the car with
Yeah.
the guy that she's having the affair with.
Yeah. And she essentially breaks it off with him.
Yeah, and he doesn't want her to, and he
Yeah.
follows her, and that's quite intense.
Yeah.
And he seems quite a little bit aggressive about the situation.
Yeah.
Is trying to really get her
Yeah.
to come back, and sort of he
Yeah.
wants to drive her home. She won't let him.
Yeah.
And then then she's obviously broken up with him.
Yeah.
And then she goes to school the next day,
Yeah.
but you can see that the glances are actually happening during the
Yeah.
actual class.
Yeah.
Um, and then it comes to
Mm.
the fact that Karen goes around her house, doesn't
Yeah.
she, or her apartment, and they're having a conversation, and Holly pretty much breaks down
Yeah.
and spills the beans about everything, saying
Yeah.
that she's been in a relationship with a married man,
Yeah.
which leads to hand touching
Yeah.
which is instigated by Karen,
Yeah.
but is
Yeah. A lot
encouraged.
of the relationship that follows, it's very clear that it is Karen who does initiate it.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely consensual in that respect,
Yeah.
that she does want
Yeah.
that to happen, and often is the
Yeah.
leader in the situation.
Yeah.
And Holly is in a place where she is emotionally unstable at that point.
Yeah.
She's obviously, her mum's always going on at her
Yeah.
about her.
Yeah. And kind of references this later that my mum isn't really very emotionally supportive. She's just like, how are you feeling? How is your life? And just like,
Very base level
yeah,
conversation
very
rather than it being in
superficial
depth.
questions rather than actually trying to really help her.
Yeah. Had she really been trying to help her, she would have probably
Yeah.
found out she was with a married man,
Yeah.
rather than it just being a very basic conversation
Yeah.
around her relationship, and
Yeah.
or what her relationship status was at that
Yeah.
point. So that then leads into further escalation of the situation,
Yeah.
and it ends up with a physical interaction between Karen and Holly,
Yeah.
which is obviously extremely contentious, because
Yeah.
although Karen is 16 years old,
Yeah.
she is a pupil in a school,
Yeah.
and therefore makes it morally and legally incorrect.
Yeah.
Um, so that's quite difficult to watch, because they're quite open about it as well
Yeah.
when they're in the school.
Yeah.
They aren't, and they are. It's
Yeah.
strange. They're not really hiding this
Yeah.
fact, and it's picked up on by students.
Yes.
One of them being
Yeah.
Lorraine. Sorry,
Lorraine.
Lorraine. Yeah, it is Lorraine. Where she sort of questions her about it, and
Yeah.
asks her whether she's they're sat on the beach
Yeah.
talking. She it kind of
it starts off by her saying, with her saying, we're quite close to her, aren't we? And then he says, but I think you're closer to her than I am.
yeah,
And so moves over towards that
yeah. So
line of
that
questioning.
first interaction with that
As
is
Karen plays it very awkwardly.
yeah, yeah. There's she kind of doesn't really answer anything.
Yeah,
And she was, no, she's just my teacher. And she says that about 3 or 4 times. No, she's
yeah,
just my teacher. She's just my teacher. That's
yeah,
all. That's it.
yeah,
So she's trying to even tell herself, I think,
yeah,
that that's the case. Because
yeah,
at that point, they have
yes,
already had sex by that point, haven't they? So,
yes. And the, what you kind of at this point is implying with both of them really is that they have, in a sense, they're sort of splitting that they have who they are to a degree in school, which is like the personas,
yeah.
if you're looking at psychology, and then outside of that situation, having who they actually are.
Yeah. And then it kind of kicks off in the classroom with
Yeah,
one of the boys basically saying
yeah,
that you're a lesbian and
yeah,
that are you sleeping with Karen.
yeah,
So Karen gets very upset about it.
yeah,
Holly gets extremely angry about it,
yeah,
kicks him out in quite a very unprofessional way.
yeah,
Certainly not the behaviour you would expect from a teacher.
yeah,
And kicks him out. And she basically says, I'm assuming it's their teacher when she says
yeah,
Mr. whatever his name is,
yeah,
you need to tell him about this. And he's like, oh, I will tell him about
yeah,
this. And you can see she's scared.
yeah,
But she does not
yeah.
stop doing
No,
what she's doing
and immediately after that scene, it then moves to a scene between Karen and Lorraine.
in the gym. Yeah.
Yeah, and uh, Karen basically says to Lorraine, I know you told everyone you couldn't look at me during the classroom when
Yeah.
it was happening. And she said, oh no, I didn't tell everyone. And then when Karen actually says to her, you really upset her, I love her, sort
Yeah.
of thing. And Lewin's reaction is that's disgusting, and then sort of goes to that's disgusting and horrible.
Yeah.
And
She's not a
yeah,
teacher.
yeah, and then basically, and then says, yeah, I did tell everyone, sort of thing.
Yeah. So it's clear that is what she's done. So
Yeah,
as her best friend, not a
yeah,
very nice thing to have done.
yeah,
And has obviously blown it
yeah,
totally out of the water. Now you would assume that that would then stop the situation.
yeah.
It doesn't.
No,
The next part is where she has a conversation
mm,
with her mum, and
yeah,
she tells her mum,
yeah, because I think her mum's just sort of been again very superficially questioning, and then Holly kind of almost in a way almost like snaps and just says, and then she goes, I'm seeing a girl, can you accept that? And then he goes, she's 16, she's in my class, and basically
yeah,
says everything. Basically says, can you respect that? Can you understand that sort of thing?
yeah, which she can't,
No.
and she warns her against
Yeah,
continuing to do it, and she isn't
yeah,
listening to it.
yeah,
And then it puts to the Karen and Holly
yeah,
in bed together again.
yeah,
But Holly is definitely starting to worry about the
yeah,
situation and
and
says to her, "I need to leave."
yeah,
Which Karen then says, "Well, I'll come with you."
yeah,
Holly doesn't want her to do that.
yeah,
Well, I wouldn't say she doesn't want her to do it. She
but
says not to do it.
yeah, because Mark's probably concerned for her
Yeah,
and everything else.
yeah. Whereas Karen is a 16-year-old.
Yeah,
The whole issue with this
yeah,
is that that would mean her leaving a family. That it would mean
yeah,
that a 16-year-old going away
yeah.
from things.
Although we do see a lot of Karen's family life later on
Yeah,
in the series, so
yeah.
that kind of
There's
sets context for everything that's going on.
yeah, and leaves some more open questions later
Yeah,
about what actually does happen.
yeah,
Um, but then the next bit is that they're back in the class again,
yeah,
and it's is it Lorraine that says something, or is it's one of the pupils that says something
yeah,
again? They're all sat there
yeah, and
banging on the table saying lesbian, lesbian,
yeah,
lesbian, lesbian, and she
yeah,
just picks her bag up. Holly just picks her bag up and walks out,
yeah,
and it shows her walking through the corridors, walking out
yeah,
of the school, and as she's walking out of the school,
yeah,
Karen turns up behind her,
yeah,
and they hold hands and walk out,
yeah,
and that's the end of
that's
it.
the end. So
So,
probably this is when we were hinting towards earlier on that there's a really contentious episode. This is that episode because unlike even most TV series or TV dramas that focus on, even to this day, when it comes to teacher-student relationships, there's always a level of ethical, or there's always an ethical stance or a moral stance on it.
yeah,
This is probably one of the few times where that kind of relationship is depicted and there isn't a moral stance taken on it. So you are very much sort of left to
yeah,
questioning it yourself. And
There's no
yeah,
there appears to be either there are no repercussions or you need to allow for those repercussions
because
yourself.
yeah,
So it's a thinking episode.
which very much sort of plays into the second episode, and in that second episode leaves things open, but there are consequences that are delayed.
Yeah, so you know those
Yeah,
consequences, you know they're
yeah,
going to happen at some point. This you
yeah,
don't know whether there are consequences. You know that there are
yeah,
potential consequences to
yeah,
it. You don't know whether those
yeah,
consequences happen. You don't know whether they walk off and leave and go away at
yeah,
this point. You don't know whether
yeah,
they come back, whether Holly goes somewhere and
yeah,
Karen stays. You don't know what's going to happen. So
yeah,
it leaves a lot of things open.
yeah.
And
And within the wider series, that is never actually answered.
no,
It's
it's alluded to
yeah. It's like
slightly, ever so
there's
slightly.
a, there's an allusion to what may have happened, but
Yeah.
never a definitive answer.
Yeah, just because of something else that happens in an episode, but it doesn't actually ever
Yeah,
explain it at all.
and when that event happens in said episode, you look at Lorraine in a very different light.
Yes. But I have realised on that episode that when we do that
Yeah,
episode,
yeah,
that I think it maybe explains why Karen is feeling the way she is. She's
yeah,
also feeling quite lonely,
yeah.
and
Which I
I
think,
feel like her family may have not even noticed if she did disappear at that point.
yeah,
So
because that's one of the things that kind of runs through all of it is this sort of sense of existential loneliness, like, and either that being resolved, or
yeah,
somewhat resolved.
yeah, or having to find a way
Yeah,
of coming to terms with it.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, there's no conclusion. So
yeah,
it's left open to you to make your own
yeah,
conclusion, which I personally like, but I can see why it
yeah,
was such a contentious issue
and
at the time and why the viewing
yeah,
figures.
they dropped by a millions
Yeah.
between this episode and the next episode.
And I think even back in 2012, we touched on this
Yeah,
about the fact that because it is a same sex situation, that
that would
may have
have
also played
influenced
in.
into it as well. But and this is a whole interesting thing that just came to me whilst having the conversation is that if I'm remembering correctly, one of the first films to ever actually depict a lesbian relationship was a German film released in the early 20s, and that was a relationship between a teacher and a student, and that film is kind of known for not really taking a lot of stance on it either. So
It's
there's,
interesting that
there's
that's
there's been and that is quite a common trope within the well, not trope, but that's a common story thread within uh, a lot within lesbian stories is that you do get teacher student relationships between a somewhat common
yeah.
thread within that
I suppose
negative
that
world in a
makes
sense.
it makes sense.
Yeah,
But yeah, I can see why it was contentious at the time.
yeah,
I don't think it would be anywhere near that now,
yeah,
because but I think it'd be leaving it open the way that they did,
yeah,
no consequences,
yeah,
because people like to see consequences in those kinds of
yeah,
situations. Personally, I think both me and you can. I think, and
yeah,
I speak for you slightly on this as well,
yeah,
that you actually like the fact that that is where
yeah,
they left it.
yeah. I think it works better because I think, and from what I've seen of uh, the writer and director's other work, it is very much around questioning social prejudices. Like before this series, he made a film called Love and Hate, which is uh, again set in a very rough
Yeah,
Londony-esque area,
yeah,
which is and it's a relationship between a young British teenager and a uh, Muslim teenager,
yeah,
and very much about their relationship and a wider world around them. And then there's a TV film that he did called Dive, which is about uh, a teenage girl who gets accidentally pregnant another with another teenage boy,
yeah,
and it's very much about their relationship and how it goes from there.
yeah.
So, as a writer and director, is someone who very much will write up unorthodox relationships and want to put them there to make you question
Makes you
things.
question things. Yeah, and that's definitely what this
Yeah,
did. I think even from the moral
yeah,
perspective of it,
yeah,
and because the age is inappropriate,
yeah,
clearly, the position that Holly has makes it
yeah,
inappropriate. But it
but,
does, but because it's led by Karen, it
yeah,
does also make you question how.
yeah,
I have to point out that the boundaries should have been there from Holly. Holly should
yeah,
have made sure those boundaries were there,
yeah,
but it does make you question around a young teacher
yeah,
and the older side of pupils,
yeah,
as pupils are getting sort
yeah,
of GCSE level and above
yeah,
and have gone past the age of consent,
yeah,
that becomes very complex.
yeah,
And I can see how it happens. It's morally, ethically, and legally wrong,
mm,
but I can see how that
yeah,
relationship happened in this, and
yeah,
it seems quite
yeah,
realistic that would
yeah.
happen.
And one of the things that is interesting how the relationship is portrayed is that it is very much a relationship where even though because of a position that Holly has,
Hmm.
she does have power over Cam, but it's very much just two people in a relationship, which is why I think it is so contentious. Is that it never actually shows either one of them
Abusing
over
a situation.
overtly.
Yeah, there's no abuse
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
situation there from either side.
yeah,
And actually, Holly and
yeah,
both of them, it's a loving relationship.
yeah. It's
They
very,
fall in love with each other.
yeah, it's very much just like any other relationship, apart from the fact that it breaks a lot of boundaries,
Yeah,
both personal, ethical, and
yeah, and I think that is
legal.
what he's trying to do when he's
Yeah,
written this. Is it is trying
and
to
to
make you question whether something is right or wrong,
yeah,
and the fact that things don't just sit in right or wrong.
yeah, it is very much blurred.
Yeah, you put human beings into a situation, right or
Yeah,
wrong becomes blurred, and
yeah.
our perception of it is blurred. And interestingly, in the last episode, that's a very different. It's got a similar kind of trope, but a
But
completely
but there's a
different.
different way of dealing with it.
Yeah, and yeah, I found it an extremely interesting episode. It made me question a lot around my
Yeah,
moral compass.
yeah,
I have a very strong moral compass in the way I feel about it, and it is
yeah,
that I totally disagree with it happening, but
yeah,
at the same time can see why.
yeah,
So logically, I can see why somebody would fall in love with somebody in that situation,
yeah,
given all the surrounding
yeah,
environmental issues to it,
yeah,
both from Holly's age,
yeah,
Cameron's age, Holly being new to the job, what was happening in
yeah,
Holly's life, all of those
yeah,
things. I can see how they got to that point.
yeah,
I question more about if that is was to happen, why did it happen, and why was Holly not given the tools to make sure those
yeah,
boundaries were put in place?
yeah,
Or if she
which,
was given the tools, why did she not put them in
yeah,
place? What stopped her
yeah,
from? Because if she'd put a boundary up straight away and not done that first thing,
yeah,
which is when it should have stopped, she should have
yeah,
said, "No, I can't do that."
yeah,
Because, but we can both go at separate
yeah,
times and we can discuss it in the
yeah,
school setting. I'm quite happy
yeah,
to do that, but I can't see you outside of school.
yeah. Because uh, as I was saying when we were talking about it, is that I have heard stories from when I was at school of teachers who may have been in a relationship with someone and then once they left school, several years later, oh, they get married.
Yeah, it happens. It does
Yeah,
happen, and we might pretend it doesn't. We might
yeah,
not want to think that it does, but it
yeah,
does, and it is such a complicated age because 16 you
yeah,
are allowed
yeah,
in every other sense of the word.
yeah. Because
You're allowed to do it, but you can't in that very
yeah,
specific situation.
because it's and I think part of why it's so contentious, but also so uh, easy to understand why it happens, is that when you have someone who's in early to mid 20s and someone who's uh, mid to late teens, your age span is somewhat different in that it's 8 to 10 years,
Yeah,
but psychologically you're very much in similar places.
yeah,
In that uh, you you have one of you, in this case, someone who's in their 20s is someone who is just in the world, and someone and the other person is just coming into the world.
yeah.
So
You're the opposite ends of the same
yeah,
situation.
yeah, you're the opposite ends of the same point in life.
Yeah, and both of those things can
Yeah,
be that you see
yeah,
something in each other.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, it's made me question a lot around that. I
yeah,
don't like I say, my moral compass won't change on it,
yeah,
but it makes sense why it would have happened.
yeah,
I think it's a very interesting take on it, and I love the fact that it ended with no
yeah,
repercussions being told to you so that you can put that in place
yeah,
for yourself, because in a way, if you do feel strongly about it and feel that there should have been repercussions, you can make sure
yeah.
those repercussions happened, whereas if you don't,
Don't.
you're
Yeah,
not going to do that. I actually feel like it's somewhere in the middle,
yeah,
that there should have been repercussions, but I don't feel that it should have been really strict repercussions
mm,
on a legal basis.
yeah,
But I certainly don't think she should ever be allowed to be a teacher again.
yeah,
So I think there should have been
yeah,
professional
yeah,
repercussions,
and
but not legal ones,
yeah,
in my view, in this
yeah. Because
situation.
and that sort of goes back to how it's not portrayed. The relationship itself is not portrayed in the negative light; it's portrayed in actually a very positive
Yeah,
light.
yeah. I would be feeling very different if I felt in any way, shape,
Yeah,
or form that Holly had instigated that
yeah,
situation, which I don't think she did.
no,
I think it was. I don't think it was Karen instigating it. I
yeah,
think Karen was feeling
yeah.
something and acting
I
on it.
think it's a natural movement.
yeah, and
Mm.
yeah, a very complex
Yeah,
episode to watch, and
very very hard to watch because of how
how it made me feel.
yeah, and how of a touchy matter even now that
Yeah,
kind of relationship is.
yeah, yeah, and it made me feel very conflicted in how I felt about it.
Yeah,
So, again, going down to how I morally feel about it, and
yeah,
how logically I can
yeah,
see how it happened, and
yeah,
that's a weird place to be, a nice place to be, because it
yeah,
makes you question
yeah,
your own thought process on things.
yeah, which is what this kind of thing should do,
Yeah,
if nothing else.
but out of all of them, I would say what that episode is the best of
Yeah,
all of them. It's
yeah, because I've read some people who reviewed it and said the first two episodes are kind of what you can expect, and then uh, episode three is the one that is general and that stands out to most people.
it's kind of like the first two episodes of climbing the diving board. This
Yeah,
one's this one's
this one's
moving off it,
yeah,
and then the last one is kind of just coming back up for air at the end of
yeah,
it, but your face covered in water, and
yeah,
so it's definitely, as we said at the
yeah,
beginning, in the first video that we did on
yeah.
this, it's very much a build up
To
to the
this,
top, a
yeah,
bit down, and it goes back up again.
yeah,
So it the next episode's a little
yes, maybe that,
fluffier again
yes, almost
to an
like a
extent,
yes, almost like giving you breathing space between this and the fifth episode. Which even that episode isn't as
intense as this one.
intense and complex as this one.
Thank you so much for watching our video. We are really new to this and really new to YouTube, so we're working out a lot of the kinks at the moment, especially around editing. But if you enjoyed watching this video, then please like, subscribe, and comment. It really does mean a lot to two neurodivergent people who love to talk and really want to share that with others. Thank you.